'Cause fishing, it's in my soul.
Welcome to the Salt Strong Podcast, disrupting fishing entertainment as you know it. Prepare to laugh. Prepare to get to know fishing legends in a whole new and unfiltered way. And on occasion, you might even learn a thing or two about fishing. Here's your host, Joe Simons. Like diamonds.
Do pros really catch fish every single trip? Hey there, guys. Joe Simons, Like Diamonds, back again with the Salt Strong Podcast. And this question, do pros, do experts, do the people who are out in the water every single week, do they actually catch fish every single trip? Well, the answer is yes and no. And I will explain. So let's take my brother Luke, for instance. We've had many trips where we got tons of tight lines. I'm talking like where we find a school of trout and then find like a different school of jacks hitting top water, and we're throwing top waters out and they're exploding. And then we'll find ladyfish and around a school of bait, and literally might catch 50 or 60 fish in a morning. And to me, that's a lot of fun. And I go back and we've had this multiple times now where we have a day like that. Okay. But that's all we caught: jacks, trout, and ladyfish, tons of them. Okay. So let's just call it 60 fish. No lies. Like, we're in schools where it's every cast, you're catching one of those three things. So that's in a couple hours. We'll get back to our meeting, and our team knows that we went fishing and did some filming. And one person will ask, "Hey, how'd it go today, guys?" And I will say, "Oh man, it was pretty awesome. Like, it was so many tight lines." And Luke will literally say, "Oh, dude, it was horrible. We didn't catch a single thing that we were going after because we were going after redfish and snook, for instance." And so it's part of it is a mindset thing where even guys like Luke, like, he was disappointed in that day, even though he still enjoys getting tight lines. Like, he's so competitive on catching those specific fish, whereas most people, I'm guessing 90% of anglers, would have been thrilled to have that. And so here's where I'm going with this. In Luke's mind, did he really catch the fish that he wanted to get an inshore slam? Let's just be specific. He really wanted to get an inshore slam. We already got tons of trout. He really wanted to find some redfish and snook, but everywhere we kept going, we would find schools of jack and bait with just a bunch of ladyfish. And so in his mind, he's disappointed. He certainly can catch fish every single trip. I mean, heck, if we just wanted to go get shrimp and sit by a dock or a bridge, we can guarantee to catch a little snapper. I mean, that you almost have to try not to catch fish if you have shrimp and are fishing with a little bit of current and know there's, some fish around there, like a deeper dock or a bridge piling, etc. It's no different than a Bass Pro being able to go catch a bluegill with some bread at dock. Of course, they can do that, but that's not their purpose, right? A new angler, they, for the most part, just want to get tight lines and need to work on that. And I think the disappointment is the gap, right? The disappointment is because of all social media and the stuff that you see of everyone catching these monster fish. And a new angler gets in there and quickly becomes frustrated because they're like, "Oh, I'm not doing all that." And what they don't know is all the hard work and all the trial and error and all the skunked trips, like the ones that I mentioned earlier, of not catching the species that you want, to be able to dial it in to go get a 38 or a 40-inch redfish or a 40-plus inch snook. That just doesn't happen overnight in most cases. There's obviously times we're just lucky in the right place at the right time. But to really dial on those trends and to really become consistent at catching bigger fish like redfish and overslot snook and big trout, that takes some time and practice. It takes shortcuts as well, which is a big thing that we do here at Salt Strong. But I think that's why this question comes up is, from newer anglers, like, "Man, you guys really catching all these fish every trip?" Like I said, yes and no. Some days it's just a bunch of tight lines, which is still a lot of fun. I mean, there's nothing wrong with catching jacks, nailing topwater plugs. But if our goal was to catch an inshore slam, it's still kind of a failed day. And so I had a really interesting conversation with the founder over at Bass Forecast. So they have an app. It's very similar to what we do with our Smart Fishing Tides. We have a strike score. If you don't know about Smart Fishing Tides, it's one of the coolest things we've ever invented. It's the Smart Fishing Tides is software that we own, that we built from scratch. It's all proprietary, and it takes in all this data and it gives you a strike score out to 14 days. It's a forecast, just like Bass Forecast. And I think theirs is very similar. It's 14-day forecast, and it gives you a number between 1 and 10 on how good the bite should be that day for a specific tide station. For them, it's lakes, but for us, it's for a specific tide station. So if you were in St. Pete, there's, I don't know, 6 tide stations around. You pick the one, it brings in all this data, and it tells you up to 14 days, and it's pretty doggone accurate which of the days should have the best bite. And then a 10 being like perfect, like, hey, you better take the day off. Anything over 9, you should take the day off work and fish that day. And if it's a 2 or a 3, and it's got decimals too. If it's a 2.8 or a 3.9, anything under like a 6 is kind of those are days that you might want to skip, or maybe replace with the 7 or 8 or an 8.2 or whatever it might be. And then it takes it a step further and does it by hourly. So for each day, so let's just say you found an 8.2 on a Thursday and said, oh, cool, I can get that day off. I'm going to fish that 8.2. Then you click on that, and then it shows you the hourly projections based on all the data coming in as well. And once again, very, very accurate. If you're not using it, definitely should use it. And the new app, we're merging smart fishing spots with smart fishing tides. Right now, they're kind of separate. We're bringing them in together, which is going to be really, really cool. But anyhow, Bass Forecast, very similar. They don't have the smart spots like we do, but it's for bass fishing only. They do the projections for different lakes on how the bite will be out to 14 days. Okay. So I'm talking with the founder, and they've got a couple pros on their staff as well, like full-time bass fishing pros, guys who are winning real money, big money in tournaments. And what they found after talking to all these pros and just hardcore weekend warriors, that only about 20% of the time, so 1 out of every 5 trips, does a bass angler get a bag limit. And that means 5 like legit keeper bass, okay, that you would take to like a weigh-in, for instance, if you're familiar with the bag limit term. So let me repeat that, because I think it's very similar to saltwater fishing, if not identical. So only about 20% of the time do even pros that are going out there like on their practice days, are they getting the full bag limit, 5 keeper fish that they would weigh in on any given day. Okay. That means what? They're batting 200, right? I mean, in general, that's about 20%. There's some days and some pros that are a little bit higher, but in general, that was kind of the average they found from pros all the way to weekend warriors. The average was about 200% of the time they were having essentially an epic day, right? When you get a big bag limit, that's a great day. I would use the same analogy for inshore saltwater fishing is like an inshore slam, right? There are days where you can catch a million trout. There's days we've had it where we catch snook till we're just tired. Even redfish. When you find those schools, especially coming up here October, that's a good time to find these big schools of reds where, I mean, you could be doubling up and doubling up and doubling up. You catch them till you're blue in the face sometimes. So I'm going to use the same analogy as like an inshore slam, and I think that's pretty accurate. I'd say most people, like experienced anglers, are catching an inshore slam about 20% of the time. But 100% of the time, they can go catch fish, right? Even if it's just, hey, ladyfish or trout or quick mangrove snapper. I think if you ask any pro, they'd be confident if you just had to catch fish. Almost all of them would say, of course, I can do that in my sleep. But to catch an inshore slam, right, that takes a little bit more thinking. It takes a little bit more luck. It takes a little bit more planning. And I mean, because you're having to go fish different spots normally to find each one of those species. You might have to use different lures or presentations depending on the time of year to go catch each one of those 3 species. And I'm talking like here in Florida, it would be snook, redfish, and trout. In other states, it might be a redfish, trout, flounder, et cetera, striped bass if you're from the Northeast. So really, really interesting, if you think about that. And so our goal is really to move you up from that 200%, right? Think of it like baseball. Even the best batters, the Ted Williams of the world, I mean, even if you're close to 400, that's next level. That's unheard of, right? Tony Gwynn, to be able to be that consistent and get a batting average at 360 or 370 or closer to 400 over that many years is almost unheard of. It's Hall of Famer status, best ever. And that's the best, the best, the best. None of them are over 500%, right? So I hope this helps you in terms of keeping the confidence up high. Because I hear from people and they're almost down, like, oh man, I feel like I'm failing. I'm not getting to slam every trip. Most people don't. Even many of the pros aren't catching an inshore slam every trip. And I'd go on to wager it's only about 20% of the time, meaning 1 out of every 5 trips where there's a good inshore slam, like with keeper fish. We've had many days where, oh yeah, it's a little 16-inch snook or a really small rat red. But I'm talking about like a true bag limit, like stuff that you go way in on a slot tournament or over slot tournament, something you'd be proud of. It's probably only about 1 out of every 5 times, just being completely honest. And there might be someone who says, oh, whatever, I catch it every time. I don't believe that. Unless you had 8 hours. If you had 8 hours every time you went fishing and you had every ounce of live bait possible, maybe you could get a little bit higher, but it's still really, really tough in general. If you're assuming you only have a couple hours to fish, 2-3 hours to fish, like most of us that have other things going on, and you're a weekend warrior, you're not going to go out there and just catch keeper inshore slam fish every single trip. So I urge you to use things like Smart Fishing Spots, to go through our courses, to even just watching the Smart Fishing Game Plan every Friday that we do for our Insider members. All of these are little shortcuts that increase your chances of being a Ted Williams, of taking that 200% up to 280 to 300. What if it got from just 200 to 300, right? That's a huge difference over a long period of time. If it got up to 400, if you doubled it, that means every other trip now, compared to what you were doing, you're now catching an inshore slam, and that would be epic. And so that's what these shortcuts do. That's really why Salt Strong Insider Club exists. I mean, there's so many cool things you could do with all the shortcuts I mentioned, with even just getting in the community. I have received personally so much help from our members in the community, especially like right now, we're leaving here this afternoon to go fish a brand new spot we haven't fished before. And guess what we did? We leaned on the community and asked, hey, we're going to be here. Anyone fished this area recently? And boom, a few people have. And we have some trends already using our network. If you read the little ebook we put together, the 10 deadly redfish mistakes, one of the topics there was about having a network. And I mentioned C.A. Richardson, who, we used to fish with quite a bit back in the early days of Salt Strong. And he said that was the secret sauce. Like that's one of the most powerful weapons, is having a network. So if he's fishing in Louisiana, as you guys know, CA heads down to Louisiana, he hasn't been there in 8 months, 9 months. He's going in there kind of blind, except for the fact he's got a network that he's chatting with the whole way there, trying to find out, all right, are these redfish back in the marsh? Are they up in the shallows? Are they all off on the flats? Are they out there near the near all the Menhaden? Are they offshore? Where the heck are these big bull redfish right now? And so that when he launches his boat that first morning in a brand new state he hadn't fished at all year, he has a massive amount of knowledge on where to go, and more importantly, what to avoid, or areas to avoid. It's all about finding that 90-10 zone as fast as humanly possible to, once again, increase your chances of batting for 500. I mean, that is the goal. So if you are newer, don't get discouraged. It is not normal for pros or even the really experienced weekend warriors to be catching epic inshore slams every trip. Now, they might catch a nice fish every trip. Absolutely. And that takes time. That takes some practice. That takes some time on the water. That takes studying. That takes learning all these shortcuts and dialing in trends. But they're not, in most cases, not catching a massive bag limit every single time they hit the water. And that includes even the absolute best of the best bass fishing pros, who some of these guys are making millions of dollars per year. Not even those guys are going out and catching full bags every single time they hit the water. Are they catching fish? Absolutely. They have a gift. They've spent the time on water. They know how to catch at least just one bass. They're not getting skunked, but they're also not catching, 5-7 pound or more bass every time they hit the water. It's not what really happens. So I'm hoping this helps. hope it sheds some lights on what really happens behind the scenes, and hopefully gets you pumped to keep going and to not give up just because you see the best of the best stuff on Instagram or social media or even our private community. There's a lot of people posting some awesome fish, and sometimes you're like, well, man, is it just me? Am I the only person not catching all these fish every time? You are not alone. I've been out with Luke many times. We fish pretty much every week, and we've had days we're on the struggle bus. Once again, still catch a lot of fish because we know how to find fish, but it might not be the ones that we're looking for. We might only catch one nice snook for the whole day, and the rest has been, little small trout, maybe a dink red, and a bunch of jacks and ladyfish. So don't get discouraged. You are not alone. This game is just like baseball. We're just trying to increase our batting average. That's it. So I hope this is helpful. And once again, go use Smart Fishing Tides and Smart Fishing Spots, of course. But Smart Fishing Tides, I think, got overlooked just because Smart Fishing Spots got so popular. Smart Fishing Tides, I think you can go there, smartfishingtides.com, or if you're in the community, just click on the tides. We are going to be, over the next probably 30 days, it will be merged into one app that you will go download in the App Store on iTunes and the Google Play or Android Play. So that will happen soon. But for now, as I'm recording this, it is still separate, but it is really cool. I mean, it predicts which day will be the best bite with pretty good accuracy, and which the hourly level, hour feeding level projections. And like any forecast with weather or anything, it just gets more and more accurate the closer it gets. So really, really cool. Guys, hope this was helpful. Make sure to go to saltstrong.com to join the Insider Club if you're not a member. If you are a member, get in the community. We are giving away over $1,000 of free tackle every month. So $1,000 free tackle. All you have to do is just be active in the community and you're automatically entered. We just gave away some really cool stuff. Some beach fishing, like a whole massive $500 cart, some big coolers. We got all kinds of knives and other cool things that we're giving out this month, including some like couple $100 pliers, landing nets, all kinds of cool stuff. So about $1,000 every single month we are giving out completely free just for being active in the private insider community. And that's community.saltstrong.com is the URL. You must be logged in, of course. So we will talk to you on the next episode.
'Cause fishing, it's in my soul.